even at that early stage, when we played our first gig, it was as if a devil had been unleashed, because he was full of movement, absolutely as if he was off his head, but a good performer, and so this carried on throughout his career with the Unknown Blues. Very good to deal with. I think, generally speaking, very professional, but once he got on stage, the stage was his, and he did whatever he wanted, and if anybody crossed him, look out. I'm not meaning band members, but people of the audience, he would tell them where to get off.
Okay. Tell me just briefly, how long has it been since you've played with the Unknown Blues on stage, and how does it feel to have the reunion gig coming up tonight? It's a pretty special night.
The last time I played with the Unknown Blues was in 1969. I have played in other groups since, up until probably 74 or 75. I haven't played on stage in front of an audience since that time. We've done a few brief rehearsals over the past 2 days. The first one I was very disappointed with. However, today we had a good rehearsal, and I'm really looking forward to tonight. I'm looking at it not so much as being able to play as a professional musician, but just catching up with a lot of friends that I haven't seen for maybe 30 or 40 years will be there tonight, and the music will be coincidental to the evening, I think.
You feeling nervous?
Not particularly. No, I think I'll just take the view that when I get up there, well, this is what I'm doing, and if you don't like it, too bad, I'm here for me, not for them.
A lot of people, in fact, pretty much everyone remembers you as the flamboyant one in the band, and a lot of these photos bear that out. Are we going to be flamboyant up on stage tonight? And why were you the flamboyant one, Vaughan?
I'm surprised. You've shocked me with that one. I think on stage I always let Dave be the front guy. However, sometimes in solos I'd get out towards the front, but I didn't see myself as flamboyant. I can't understand why people thought I was. Maybe my memory's not as good as it should be, Or that, who was it, Robbie Burns, that some power would the gift he gie us to see ourselves as others see us, I'm not sure.
What about your reputation as a ladies' man, which is something I've heard repeatedly as well? Is that true? How true is it?
I don't really think it was. I just enjoyed life, and you're playing in a band, and girls come along and you meet them and have a good time, and as we've been saying for the last few days, look, nobody got hurt, we never killed anybody, we never consciously tried to really upset people, so it was just kids having fun. I'm sure I was no different to anybody in a band nowadays, or a film producer perhaps, I don't know,
But what they're saying is that you had more success with the ladies perhaps, or there were more of them anyway. Why is that? What was your secret?
I don't know. I like girls. I went to a boys' boarding school. I was sequestered for a few years, and when I came out of school, I just broke out, I suppose, but I was no different to anybody else. I don't think.
Okay. It's really neat to see you and Dave and Barry spending time together, and it's a long-lasting friendship, which in large part this film and this week is about friendship, isn't it? Can I just get a little bit from you on your friendship with Dave and with Barry and with the other guys in the band, and how it was obviously an important time in your lives that you all remember and sort of keep, still going?
It might be crass to say it, but the relationship within the Unknown Blues between the players might be similar to the relationship within the Rolling Stones. There were love-hate relationships. There was all kinds of things going on. It wasn't all happy all the time, but generally speaking, it was. And you realised you had to forgive sort of bad moments in order to enjoy the good moments. Having said that, some of the guys that were in the band almost choose not to go back there. You know what I mean? Because they're a bit worried that somebody might say something embarrassing about them. But all in all, anything that I've ever done with the band, I've told my wife about, because I was a young guy and I'm an honest sort of a person, and she accepts me for what I am. Likewise, Hoagie and Barry, we all did different things that we wouldn't do as mature adults, and I think the three of us would like to thank you very much for this opportunity to get together and do this documentary and maybe show some other people what it was like to be in a band in the 60s.
Tell me a little bit about Barry. He's a neat guy with a good sense of humour, and he's quite a unique person who obviously everyone... Well, he's unique, isn't he? Tell me about Barry. How do you feel about Barry?
Barry and I have gone through a few different phases. I knew Barry from when I was perhaps 7 years old. I was a Protestant, he was a Catholic. To get to school, I had to run the gauntlet of Catholic families, and Barry and his younger brother Terry used to lay in wait for me in the morning and knock me off my bike and smack the hell out of me. That's how I remember Barry as a young fellow. I remember Barry as a 16-year-old, as a teddy boy with his hair all swished back in a ducktail and the aluminium comb with the long pointy handle in the back pocket, and the lime green socks, walking around with two or three other guys and really antagonistic towards everybody. And then when the Beatles came out, he was still, I think, hooked into the Elvis Presley area and just wanting to punch everybody's face in. Then a few years later, when I was invited along to an Unknown Blues creation rehearsal, if you like, and to see Barry there, I thought, what the hell is going on here? However, after a few weeks, music as a common bond, we sort of healed the wounds, and we've been friends ever since.
And I'm told Barry was a hard man when he was younger and drank a lot, and it's quite different these days. Do you remember him as being a hard man? The way Anthony Wilkes told me is that he was a man who never take a backward step and was tough, basically.
He was.
And we look at photos of Barry, he was really good looking bloke, and obviously he's a very quiet, kind of gentle person,
Yeah.
But was tough as well. Can I get you to...
Yes.
What is that?
Barry had a hard upbringing, and came from a fairly broken home, I think, and ended up in institutions and things because he got into minor criminal behaviour in his early teens. So he learnt by the school of hard knocks. If you didn't survive there and stand up, or if you didn't stand up for yourself in some of these institutions, I'm not sure which they were, but you went down. So when he came out, he brought that culture with him into circles that he moved in. So Barry was likely, if something went wrong, he would punch. He wouldn't ask questions. And several times I've been up against the wall with Barry holding me and punching the shit out of me, and I've been flailing my arms about 3 or 4 inches shorter than his and not being able to connect once. I can remember another day when Barry was pretty drunk and he had me on the ground on my back and pinned down, and the fist came up to get me, and it came sailing down and just past the left of my head, and he laughed and stood up as if, I got you that time, didn't I? So there was a gentleness to him as well. He had enough presence of mind not to really hurt his friends, but he liked scaring the hell out of them if they were upsetting him. And I was a smart ass, so sometimes I probably deserved it. Barry was incredible with girls. I can only remember him having 2 girlfriends, one of whom he married, and another girl before, and he was extremely respectful to women. He is to this day, and you very seldom hear him swear in front of women, and he'll really have a go at anybody that he thinks is putting women down in his presence if they don't deserve it. Having said that, I've seen women behaving terribly and him really put them in their place and using 4-letter words to do it. So, he expects a standard from women, and if they're not performing, when he was younger, he would, if they're behaving pretty roughly, he would tell them. So that's another side of Barry that a lot of people don't recognise. He's a bit of a gentleman.
And Barry today, a vastly different person, given that he's given up drinking for
Yes.
a long time. And just give me a brief description of what sort of guy Barry is today, and compared to how he was.
Barry's a wonderful guy now. He's very giving. I came here 2 or 3 days ago. I've been here 3 times in the past 10 years, and always he'll play a bit of music and look, I'll copy you this, I'll give you this, I'll do this for you. Mind you, it's reciprocated because I bring a few gifts for him, but he really enjoys people's company, and he's been looking forward to this. So whereas a few years ago he was very antisociable, he was just looking forward to the next drink.
And that V8 truck's pretty special, isn't it? Pretty synonymous with him.
Yes, it is. However, when I was here in 1998, he was driving a mid-30s V8 ambulance, a great big wooden-bodied ambulance that was painted black. It came from Riverton, and he was running around in that. So he always has fairly eccentric or exclusive vehicles. At one stage, I believe just after he was married, he had 11 V8s at the one time. So V8s and music are his passion.
Cool. I think we'll leave it there, Vaughan. Thank you for that. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Can we start that again, please?
Yeah.
If we can start at the John Lennon bit, that was good.
John Lennon painted his Rolls Royce psychedelically, and John Hancock decided that he would paint his car psychedelically. So a group of guys, probably at a party or drunk at the time, just started scrawling stuff all over it. A month or 2 later, the car was sitting in the front yard of Ern Street, and in conversation it was mentioned that as it was summer it would be better if it was a convertible. So Rocket went around the back and got an axe and proceeded to chop the roof off it and fold it back like a sardine can. The car never went on the road after that. That was the end of it.
Cool. Right. I like this photo. Tell me about Wombi and what that photo says to you about Wombi and his drumming and him as a person.
I think it's been said before that Wombi was an extraordinary drummer. He could hold a very, very good beat and also did really nice fill-ins. He had a lot of experience playing Shadows music, all different kinds of music prior to the band that when he joined us. And when he came into the band, it was as if we had purchased a top-of-the-line drum machine. He had a really nice drum kit that he bought when he joined the band. He bought a new set of Ludwig drums, and he was great to rehearse with because he was professional. He'd always be there on time, and he had a wicked sense of humour.
Where is that taken? Looks a pretty cool place.
Still rolling?
Yeah.
This is taken at the Cellar Club. When we first started playing at the Cellar Club, as you walked into the club, from the inside of the door, you looked to the other end of the cellar and the stage was set up there. Some months later, they moved the stage to the opposite end, so you walked in through a door on one side, walked around 180 degrees, and you were at the stage. That's when it was repainted with all this psychedelic black and white paintwork. So this is later Cellar Club. It's also a time when Wombi was going through one of his clean periods. You can see he's very cleanly or his beard is very nicely trimmed and his sideboard's nicely trimmed, and he's wearing a nice clean sort of a sweatshirt, but at other times he was pretty grovelly, you know. That's about all I can say about that.
Sure. This is a cool photo, and as a guitarist, you will have some empathy and respect for the skills of those two. Tell me about the respective musical qualities of Rocket Hancock and Barry Fitzgerald.
This photo is good. Barry Fitzgerald has his eyes closed and he's just grooving along to the music, but his mind will be working at 1,000 miles an hour because he was always bouncing off other people and adjusting rhythms to suit. John Hancock started from a point where he knew nothing till he was playing pretty good with 12 bar and all this kind of stuff. However, he went from excellent performances to woeful performances, which sort of depended on his frame of mind at the time, or how he was getting on with the current girlfriend, or if he just felt being belligerent to other people. I can remember one night him being out of key and me yelling across that he was out of key, and he moved a further fret out of key just to piss me off. So I launched across the stage with a hook, and he ended up in the audience after one punch, and the rest of the night I don't know if he played all right or not, but this was the kind of thing he'd do. He in some ways he wasn't professional. He used to get antisocial over nothing, and people were paying to see us, and we were putting on an act, and basically if he hadn't have left he would have been replaced, I think.
We were talking about the Cellar Club just before, and the third chapter was sort of synonymous with that place, and we're quite famous for their antics, their Who-like antics. Can you just tell me a little bit about their Who-like antics, if you ever saw it, and if you ever tried to sort of get up to that kind of stuff yourselves?
I can remember the third chapter. The main guy I can remember in the third chapter was Chris Brett, and what I can remember about him is he was a very good guitarist on Rolling Stones and Pretty Things music, a lot better than I was. However, he had very bad gear. A Burns Bison guitar that was heavy and unwieldy to play, and a small amp, and a reverb unit that was in a masonite suitcase beside the amp. Sometimes for effect he would kick the reverb unit to get large sort of cracking sounds and so forth. I never saw them smashing any guitars or anything. The drummer Roger Nixon was a very frantic drummer, probably a bit like Keith Moon of The Who, but they had a really tight sound as well. You know, they were very good at what they did.
And were you guys influenced by sort of Who's antics? Did you try and get up to any of that sort of stuff on stage yourselves?
No. Who didn't influence us in any way. At some stage we used to muck around a little bit, but our equipment was too valuable to us to want to smash a guitar that you treasured or break any amps or things. I think Hoagie threw the occasional maraca, but apart from that, no, we'd dance around a bit on stage and so forth, but not smashing stuff.
Okay. Tell me about a few of the details in this photo which you sent to me previously about it's the military insignia that I'm getting to.
This photo was taken at the same time as the earlier photo that I've got my hand up simulating a Hitler moustache and so forth. I'm standing with Dave Hogan and Roy Reid. Roy Reid is acknowledged as being the creator of the Antarctic Angels, and on his collar he's got a badge, a Wehrmacht badge, eagle and swastika. This badge, the Germans in North Africa were issued with tropical helmets which were similar to the British pith helmet they used in India, and on one side they had this badge. At that time there were several of them floating around Invercargill that probably veterans had brought back. So Roy had one, I had one. At one stage I had it on the scratch plate of my guitar. Another stage I had it on a sleeve of a jacket, and Roy had his on the collar of his jacket. I don't know what happened to his.
And can you just give me, I know we've sort of touched on this before, but give me a really brief overview of what your relationship was like with the Antarctic Angels, and how you, out of all the Unknown Blues guys, were probably the closest to them, I suppose, or the one who rode the most, or if that's the case.
The Antarctic Angels is a bit of an airy-fairy thing to me. My memories aren't that clear, and what I can remember is there was a guy called Graham Paulin who knew Roy Reid. I bought a Triumph motorcycle from Graham Paulin, which I repainted in psychedelic colours like black and orange, and Roy Reid and I were hanging around a lot together. Barry Fitzgerald had introduced me to Roy Reid. At one stage, Roy Reid came up with the name Antarctic Angels. Both Roy and I had patches on the back of jeans jackets with Antarctic Angels, which looked similar to the Hells Angels badge. They had the wings and the helmet and the skull, and Antarctic Angels Invercargill. However, they were handmade. At that stage, a few younger people came along. The Wilkes brothers, another young guy by the name of Neville Sharp, and a few others, but I don't want to name too many names because they might not want to be known. And they, as a group, Antarctic Angels, I think they started doing their own thing, and I wasn't involved too deeply with that. However, Graham Paulin and Roy and I had been a little bit earlier, probably a month or two earlier. However, having said that, I used to go to a lot of their parties, and they used to frequent Ern Street as well.
Can you just give me a quick list of some of the nicknames that the Antarctic Angels had? I enjoy those. So just tell me what sort of names the Antarctic Angels had, and what sort of influenced them. I'd like to bring out the point that Hunter S. Thompson's book was quite influential at that time.
I'm not sure who wrote what, but I can remember there were one or two American books on the Hells Angels, and they were quite an influence. There was one guy, his nickname was Skunk, and he had read in this book that a bikie in the States had found a dead animal, a dead skunk on the side of the road, and had eaten it. And so he found a possum and attempted to eat this partly decomposed possum, so he became Skunk. Lowbreed, I don't know how he got that name, because he was the most likable guy you would ever meet, and he was pretty polite in front of women as well, and we had a lot of good times together. I don't know why he had that name. There was another guy called Axe, who was a bit of a ferocious kind of a character and could go off at the drop of a hat. Strangely, Roy never had a nickname. That's really odd, because you could have thought up a lot of good names for Roy.
Any particular incidents stand out in your mind about Roy? Do you recall him riding a motorbike into one of your gigs? Or I've seen photos of him riding a horse around town. There must be one or two stories that you can remember about Roy.
I can remember that Roy was at one time the head of the Antarctic Angels, and the Coffin Cheetahs came down from Dunedin, and there was a challenge at a party as to who was the toughest, and so it progressed in levels of, you could say, debauchery, where they were each doing things that people watching found entirely extraordinary, that culminated in the both of them getting on a motorbike with only a boot on one foot of one of them so he could change the gears, and they drove or rode through D Street at 8 o'clock on a Friday night. They were stopped at the pedestrian lights at Esk Street and D Street with about 20 bikes behind them, absolutely naked with people walking around, and then they went back to the party. That's one thing I can remember about Roy.
Great.
I don't want to go into any more detail.
No, that's fine. That's pretty sort of harmless stuff.
Yeah.
Good one, Dave. Tell me about Dave as a front man and as a person. What are his qualities?
When I met Dave, he was one of the quietest guys you would ever meet. He used to go to church. He didn't drink. He used to come to all the parties and sit and watch other people with girls, and he would just look and giggle and keep pretty much to himself or chat amongst the other boys of the band. However, he reminded me this morning that he was only 16 or 17 at the time, and as I was probably 20, I didn't take account that he was just fresh out of school, more or less. So that probably